and Friday, March 5th, aboard the International Space Station. They will be the 235th and 236th spacewalks in support of International Space Station assembly, maintenance, and upgrades. NASA astronauts Kate Rubins and Victor Glover are scheduled to conduct the first EVA, and Rubins will conduct the second with Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, or JAXA, astronaut Soichi Noguchi. This briefing will address the programmatic and operational significance of the spacewalks, as well as the detailed procedures. Our briefers today include Kenny Todd, Deputy Manager of the International Space Station Program, Marcos Flores, February 28th Spacewalk Flight Director, Chris Edelin, March 5th Spacewalk Flight Director, and Art Thomason, Spacewalk Officer for both of the upcoming EVAs. We'll first start with some initial remarks from each of our briefers before opening it up for questions. We'll be taking questions on our phone bridge as well as on our social media platforms. If you're on the phone, please press *1 to add your name to our queue and to ask a question. If you're on social media, use the hashtag AskNASA. We'll now begin with opening comments from Kenny Todd.
Thank you, Gary. Well, first of all, I hope everybody's doing well. Good afternoon. It just seems like yesterday that I was in the same spot doing the briefing. But since that time frame, we've not only done the two spacewalks that we talked about a few weeks ago, but we've also welcomed the new Russian Progress cargo vehicle to the station, in addition to a Northrop Grumman Cygnus module bringing about 8,000 pounds of cargo to the International Space Station. So it's been a busy few weeks, but now we turn the corner and we're back to talking a lot about EVAs again on board. So anyway, we've got a set of two EVAs that we're going to do here at the end of the month and early into next month. We call them the IROSA EVA and the ISS Upgrades 3 EVA. The IROSA EVA primarily focused on getting ourselves in a position to be able to receive the new solar arrays that are coming to Space Station later this year. So we'll install some structures that will allow us to put those solar arrays in place. On the Upgrades 3 EVA, we'll be doing. We have some ammonia servicing equipment that's been out for quite a while now that we deployed a while back, and we're going to go try to get that cleaned up and get it into its home, a better home for that equipment. In addition to that, we'll clean up any work that we need to do on the solar array mods that we need to do. Any of the structures that we need to put in place, we'll clean that up on that EVA as well. In addition, one other objective that we just recently added to this EVA is associated with our the Bartolomeo platform, which is attached to the Columbus module, the European Space Agency Columbus module. As most of you might remember, we were out at that work site on one of these past two EVAs where we made some connections to the Bartolomeo platform. Unfortunately, we had some struggles with some of those connectors, and so the team has put together what I think is a pretty good plan to go out to see if we can't learn some more about what's going on with those connectors, do a little troubleshooting, and if we're able to get one or two of them connected, then we'll call that a huge success. But at this point, we really want to go back out to that work site, see what we can learn about what's going on with those connectors. And if we don't get them made at this time, certainly we're gonna be looking to get some data that will allow us to put that path back on for a future EVA. So specifically, that's where we're going with those two EVAs. Once we get those in our rearview mirror, at that point we're looking towards the end of March timeframe. We are going to be all about vehicles at the end of March and all the way through April into early May. At this point, our plan is to relocate the Crew 1 Dragon that's currently sitting on the Node 2 forward port. We're going to move it up to the top, up to the Zenith port. And we're doing that so that we have a home for the Boeing Starliner, should it fly this April as it's currently scheduled, or for the Crew 2 vehicle, the Crew 2 Dragon, that's going to be following a little later in the month. So anyway, we're at this point thinking about this relocate towards the end of March, and then we'll be in a good posture to receive either one of those vehicles. As far as on the other end of the segment, and also in April, we'll do a Soyuz exchange, and we'll bring home 63S, and our Russian colleagues will launch 64S. So there's a lot going on in this time frame. EVAs here in the very near future, and then after that, we'll start a pretty big ramp up to a lot of boosted vehicle traffic. So it's that part of the increment where it's kind of a sprint to the finish line, but the team's in really good shape and doing a nice job of planning a lot of different variables at this stage. So relative to the EVA, we'll do our go, no go at the mission management team this coming Friday. At this point, I don't see anything standing in the way of it. And so, Gary, I'll hand it back to you and let these other folks talk to you about some of the specifics.
Thank you, Kenny. With that, we'll hand it over to Marcos Flores to discuss the February 28th spacewalk. Marcos.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. I'm really happy to be part of this team. Like Kenny said, we're really looking forward to wrapping up the CVA series. We do have the upcoming activities to go ahead and get ready for those new rollout solar arrays that we're going to be deploying later this year. So for the first spacewalk this Sunday, we're going to have both Kate Rubins and Victor Glover go outside. And they're going to bring with them a couple of big bags that include a lot of the struts that are part of this assembly of structure, if you will, that we're going to be installing out in the P6 work site. We're going to go out and work in the mass canisters, basically the base of the two solar arrays on the channels 2B and 4B, and then get started with that work. Our goal for that first EVA is to go ahead and get at least that 2B modification kit installed, and then we'll get started with the work on the 4B mod kit. At that point, once we wrap up, we're planning to hand over the remaining of that activity over to the last EVA in the series for ISS Upgrades 3 later next week. From our perspective, of course, the ground teams are working the final preparations this week, as well as making sure that we have all the analysis, all the procedures and the configurations already planned and figured out ahead of the EVA, so we can support our crew members once they go out the door to get all this activity done. And in terms of the on-orbit crew, this week has been very busy. They've been working a lot on making sure that they have all their procedures reviewed and all the training completed. They've been working on getting their suits themselves ready, making sure that all the consumables that they're going to be using during the EVA are topped off and ready to go, and as well as a couple of fit checks just to make sure that they're comfortable in those suits once they go out the door. Everything's looking good from that perspective. Finally, they're getting the last set of equipment and tools they're going to be using to the EVA gathered and prepared for that EVA and making really good progress. So we're really happy where we're at with preparations for that. With that, I'm going to be handing it over to our lead EVA officer, Art Thomason. He's going to be walking you through a bit more on the timeline and some of the graphics that will show you what this structures are going to be that we're going to be installing on Sunday, and a little bit more detail about what the crew is going to be doing. So Art, over to you.
Hi, I'm Art Thomason, and I'll be the EVA officer for US EVA 71 and 72. I'd like to start off by recognizing my team, Miranda Nelson, Colin Murphy, Reagan Cheney, and Tess Caswell. These guys have all done a great job in setting up the plan and getting us ready to go out the door for this EVA, and I really look forward to working with them on console on the real day for these EVAs. So as Marcos and Kenny summarized, the plan for this is to install new structure out on P6 so that we can install 2 new solar arrays. So we've got the 2 Bravo side and the 4 Bravo side. We'll start with the 2 Bravo side, complete the installation of that structure, and then we'll pick up with the 4 Bravo side and get as far as we can on that one. So here you see the solar array augmentation plan. So that's showing you what the new solar arrays are going to look like over on the right-hand side. So you can see that in green, that's the new solar array, or the IROSA, which is smaller than the original solar arrays, but it's going to be able to generate the same amount of power. So you can see this is as port as you can go on the station. The 2 Bravo side is on the bottom, and the 4 Bravo side is on the zenith portion. Can I get the IPA overview graphic, please? So this is just another view that's showing how the solar arrays are canted out. So the neat thing about this is that you'll be able to generate power from the new solar arrays and the old solar arrays as well. And then if you see the zoomed in picture, the IROSA mod kit is what we're going to be installing. So it's the support structure that the solar arrays will eventually mount to. And can I get the mod kit graphic? There it is. So this shows the structure that we're installing. The thing in the teal color is the mass canister. So we're going to be bolting this new structure onto the mass canister. We've got the different names for these, so I'm sure you'll hear in the video you watch in a moment. I'll be referring to the 2 lower struts, the mid strut, the 2 upper struts, and then we've got the mounting bracket that the solar array is going to attach to. Bag graphic, please. So unfortunately, this mod kit is very large and it doesn't fit out the door in its current state, so we have to bring it out in pieces, kind of like assembling furniture. You can see this bag here it's really great design because it's got straps that hold each component in its own place, so it's going to stay there until the crew's ready to take it out and assemble the next piece. The one piece that's missing here is the mounting bracket. It's going to go on top of this, and then the lid will be shut. These bags are 8 feet long and over 300 pounds. So even though we don't have gravity to deal with in space, we still have the inertia and mass. And so the crew knows to be careful with this. And as they're translating out there, they're going to take it easy and make sure when they're turning corners and things like that, they help guide the bag, because this is a larger thing than what they're used to typically translating with. So I think that covers the general detail that I wanted to go over, but I've got a video that I'd like to show you guys now that walks you through step by step on what we're going to do on the EVA.
For US EVA 71, EV1 will egress the joint airlock first. You'll see EV1 has the red stripes and EV2 the white suit. EV2 will pass out the 2 strut bags containing structure to support new solar arrays. EV2 will head out to P1, where he will install the anchor hooks for the crew's safety tether. Now, this is what we call a slingshot, and will give them the 170 feet of length that they need to get all the way out to P6. At that point, both crew members will translate to P6 and install their respective bags on the 4 Bravo and 2 Bravo work sites. EV1 will translate back inboard and retrieve a portable foot restraint with a extension, and head back to join EV2 at the 2 Bravo worksite. EV1 will set up this portable foot restraint for access to the mod kit install, and then translate over to the bag, where both crew members will begin building what we call the upper triangle, which includes the mounting bracket, a left strut, and a right strut. They'll use their pistol grip tool to assemble that triangle. Once it's complete, EV1 will be in the portable foot restraint, and EV2 will hand it off to EV1. Here you see EV1 installing this on the mass canister. There's a strong soft dock feature that will hold it in place. Once it's positioned in place, EV1 will use the pistol grip tool to drive 4 bolts. EV1 will then reposition the foot restraint for access to the left side of the mod kit. Here you see the mid strut on EV1's body restraint tether. EV1 will hold the lower strut while EV2 gets into position. They'll work together to install the left lower strut. EV2 will start off by driving the bolt with his pistol grip tool, and EV1 will drive the upper bolt that connects it to the mounting bracket. They'll then work together to install the mid strut on the left side. Here you can see EV2 driving 4 bolts that hold it to the mass canister, similar to the H fixtures that were recently removed. And EV1 will drive the bolt to secure it to the upper strut. EV1 will then reposition the APFR and get back in after getting the mid strut on her BRT. BRT standing for body restraint tether. She'll get back into the portable foot restraint, receive the right lower strut, and then EV2 will translate around the mass canister for access to the installation point for the right lower strut. Again, just like the left side, they'll be working together to drive their respective bolts with their pistol grip tool. EV2 will translate up for the mid strut install, where he'll drive 4 bolts. EV1 will have a single bolt, and then EV2 will tighten the clamp bolts on both sides. The mid struts are telescoping, and this clamp bolt prevents it from telescoping any further once it's in place. The crew will then work together to secure the thermal blankets over all of the struts and make sure they're in place, as well as verifying that the pit pins that provide grounding paths for the structure are also in place. They'll then grab the necessary tools and head over to the 4 Bravo worksite. Very similar, kind of a mirror image to what they were working on previously. EV1 will install the APFR, or the portable foot restraint. And they'll work together again to build the upper triangle, consisting of the 2 upper struts and the mounting bracket. EV1 in the portable foot restraint will receive the upper triangle, install that in place, and then they'll get set up to install the final piece to get to what we call the minimum configuration. By installing this right lower strut, the system is now in a good configuration to leave it out and operate Space Station nominally. If we didn't have this installed, then we would need to perform a tie down to make sure that everything was structurally sound before heading back in. If there is extra time, we'll continue to build the 4 Bravo mod kit on this EVA. If not, we have plans to perform the rest of the install on the next EVA. The crew will then pack the empty bag with the tools that they plan to bring inside. EV2 will carry that back to the airlock. Both crew members will translate back to the airlock from P6. They'll leave the slingshots out, meaning that the tethers will be strung out to P1 because we'll use them again on a future EVA. EV2 will put the bag in the airlock and ingress, followed by EV1, who will then close the hatch.
Okay, I'm back with you, and I have here with me a upper strut. So you can see that it's covered in multi-layer insulation, or a thermal blanket, if you will. This is the side that's going to attach to the center pad. I'll get that blanket out of the way so you can see that. And this is the side that's going to attach to the mounting bracket. So there's 2 bolts on this side. One of the neat features about the bolt is, if you can see, there's some black lines there. So once the bolt is fully installed, the crew will see that that black line is flush, knowing that they got it fully installed. On the ground, we'll be monitoring the torques and turns so that we know that they got a good install, but it's nice to have that visual indicator on their side. The blanket on it is kind of unique. The blanket is there to protect it from thermal extremes. But this one has something that's a little different. We don't have to Velcro it in place or tie it in place. We actually can just put it over the bolt once that's installed. And then it has integrated wire ties in there. So you're able to just bend it around the structure, and it stays in place. So it'll definitely save the crew some time in getting this blanket in place. So you can see a few of these here now and how that works. So it's just a wire that you can wrap around. You'll also notice that there is a grounding pin. So this is used to provide connectivity throughout the whole mod kit, so that we don't have a charge build up in one place or another. So next, I'd like to go ahead and introduce the crew. If I could get the crew graphic, I'll show you that. EV1 will be Kate Rubens. She'll be wearing the suit with the red stripes, and Victor Glover will be EV2. He'll be coming out in the white suit. This will be the 3rd EVA for both of these crew members. It'll be their first time working together. But they've both seen this in the water a number of times, so I know they'll be ready to go for this, and we've talked to them a few times. They've been studying hard. Inside the vehicle, we'll have Mike Hopkins and Suichi Noguchi, getting them ready to go outside and suited up. And then here on the ground, we'll have Frank Rubio as the ground IV. So Frank's been following this with us for quite some time. He's done this in the water in the suit. He's been the communicator during a lot of our neutral buoyancy lab runs. So, we're happy to have him as part of the team, and he'll be able to give them some valuable insight as he walks in through the tasks. So we've done a lot of work here on the ground, and the crew's done a lot of preparation to get ready for this. So we're ready to go for US EVA 71. And I'll turn it back over to you, Gary.
Thank you, Art. We'll now discuss the March 5th spacewalk. So we'll go to Chris Edelin. Chris.
All right, thank you, Gary. So we have a variety of tasks planned for the ISS Upgrades 3 EVA. The top priority will be to complete the IROSA prep work that Art and Marcos described. We don't expect that Kate and Victor will have sufficient time to complete all of the IROSA prep work. So we will flex our timeline for this EVA in order to be able to complete that work so that we have a good configuration on the ISS power channels 4 Bravo and 2 Bravo to receive those advanced rollout solar arrays later this year. Our second priority task is going to be venting and relocating 2 ammonia jumpers. These are out on the Port 6 truss near where the IROSA prep work is happening. These jumpers have been used in the past to transfer ammonia between separate sections of the ISS external thermal control system. They've been used to troubleshoot leaks out on P6. So what we're going to do is the crew will vent the ammonia out of these jumpers, hoses essentially, so that they can be safely handled. And then they will leave one on P6, so it's available for any future leak troubleshooting. And the other will be coiled up and relocated back to the airlock and stowed on an external locker on the airlock. So it's in a convenient location if we ever have to go out on the starboard side and troubleshoot any ammonia leaks there. Of course, when dealing with ammonia, extra vigilance is necessary because of the concern that if we got ammonia contamination on the suits and then brought that inside station, that could represent a potential toxic atmosphere situation for the crew inside station. So again, we'll be paying extra close attention to make sure that the suits don't get any contamination with ammonia, or if they do, we have contingency procedures available and the teams are trained to execute those to make sure that the crew stays safe with ammonia. Our next task after this will be to head back to the airlock and replace a failed wireless video system external transceiver assembly, or WETA. This is one of 3 WETAs located on the outside of station. This is essentially an antenna that receives the transmission from the crew members' helmet cam, their wireless video cameras on their helmets. So just like we love watching this on NASA TV, we also really appreciate having this in mission control during EVAs to be able to have the crew members' perspective to see exactly what they're working on. So we definitely want to replace this one WETA on node 1 that failed towards the end of last year, get this replaced so that we have good coverage for our wireless video system when we're doing spacewalks. Another task that we have planned is to route 2 Ethernet cables on the aft port 1 truss. This will be used for a future wireless access point upgrades on the outside of station to accommodate payloads as well as future high-def EVA wireless video. So, and one other unique aspect to this EVA is we will have what's called the ISS experiment camera system mounted to the special purpose dexterous manipulator, or Dexter as it's commonly called. That's going to be mounted on Dexter on the station arm, and it will give us a 360-degree view of the EVA. Now, we won't have this video available in real time, but they will be capturing this video and making that available later for the public to see, to be able to sort of better experience what it's like on the outside station doing an EVA. So we're really looking forward to seeing those views. And then finally, we have a few other additional tasks that will be added to the EVA, depending upon how much of that content from IROSA Prep rolls into our EVA. Kenny already mentioned the possibility of doing the Columbus connector troubleshooting. That's one of the leading candidates. So we'll be paying very close attention to what happens on the IROSA Prep EVA, the first EVA, again, to see what our final plan will look like. It's going to be a busy 5 days in between EVAs as we finalize our plan. And as Marcos already mentioned, the crew has already been studying, preparing their suits, and they're studying the tasks for both EVAs in parallel so that they're ready to go, and that we have both a crew on orbit as well as the flight control team here on the ground ready to execute 2 safe and efficient EVAs next week. So Gary, back to you.
Thank you, Chris. With that, we'll go back to Art to walk us through the preparations and procedures.
Okay, well, thanks a lot for the great summary, Chris. I don't have too much to add to that, but I do have a little extra detail that I'd like to talk through on the first task, which I think is the most complex. That's venting the ammonia jumpers. So if we could have the jumper graphic. So this shows the initial configuration of the 2 jumpers. So these jumpers are used to tie together the early ammonia system out on the port side with the outboard ammonia system that we currently use. So these jumpers were used on US EVA 33 to do an outboard fill. So we filled that outboard ammonia system And then the plan here, as Chris mentioned, is we're going to vent both of these jumpers. So in order to do that, we'll disconnect the FH01 jumper, vent that, and we'll stow it on the vent tool extender bag. So this is a bag that we're going to bring back to the zenith part of the airlock. We'll have this jumper centrally located in the event that we need to fill the outboard ammonia system on the starboard side. And while we're there, we'll vent the FH02 jumper and leave it in place out at P6 in case we need to do a fill on the port side. So kind of as Chris mentioned, we want to make sure we vent these jumpers before we do anything with them, because right now they're tied into the ammonia system that has an accumulator as part of the system. But when they're isolated due to thermal expansion, we don't want these to rupture. So we get them vented quickly so that they'll be safe to handle and move out to the starboard side if we need to. Next slide, please. So yeah, this one is the vent tool hardware. So you see the vent tool and the vent tool extender. So obviously ammonia is something that we don't want to get on the crew or get near the crew. And we'll have these tools to help keep the pluming ammonia from the jumper vent well away from the crew. So the vent tool will attach with an adapter to each jumper, and then the end of the vent tool with the hook will plug into the vent tool extender where you see that lever. And then the crew will route the vent tool extender out to the aft side of station, attach that nozzle to a handrail, and then it'll vent station aft while the crew is on the forward side of the station, keeping them well clear of that vent. So at this point, I've got a video I'd like to show you that walks you through the different portions of the EVA.
For US EVA 72, both crew members will egress the joint airlock, EV1 in the red stripes coming out first, followed by EV2. EV1 will translate to the top of the airlock and retrieve the vent tool extender bag and put it on their BRT. EV1 will head out to the work site, taking advantage of the tethers that were set up on the previous EVA. They will stow the vent tool extender bag on the truss and set up the vent tool. EV2 will begin work setting up the vent tool extender. This will set up a nozzle so that the ammonia in the jumpers it's vented will go station aft and clear of the crew. EV1 will start to vent the first jumper by mating it, and then closing the other end to isolate the ammonia in the jumper, and then opening it to vent it out of the nozzle of the vent tool extender. Once that's complete, EV2 will take the jumper and coil it up on the vent tool extender bag so that it can be relocated back to the top of the airlock and used for outboard ops on the starboard side. EV1 will vent the second jumper in a similar way, expelling the ammonia from that jumper and leaving it in place on the port side in case it's needed for an outboard ammonia fill. Then both crew members will work together to stow the vent tool and vent tool extender back in the bag. EV1 will head out to the 4 Bravo mod kit worksite to finish completion of the mod kit on the 4 Bravo solar array. EV2 will hand the mid strut off to EV1, and EV1 will get into the portable foot restraint and they'll install the right mid strut together. EV2 working on the mast canister will have 4 bolts to drive with their pistol grip tool, and there'll be a single bolt for EV1. Repositioning the foot restraint, EV1 will retrieve the mid strut for the left side, get into the foot restraint, and then get the left lower strut. This will be the last 2 components to be installed. EV2 will translate around the mast canister and get in position to drive the lower bolt on that strut. This is a pretty high torque bolt, so we'll need a good body position there, and EV1 will drive the upper bolt. EV2 will translate up the mast canister to install the final component for both mod kits. EV2 will drive this final bolt to secure it to the mounting bracket. EV2 will drive the clamp bolts to prevent the mid-strut from telescoping. And then EV1 will make sure that all of the blankets are in place to provide thermal protection, and also make sure that pit pins are in place that provide grounding for the entire system. Once EV2 drives those final 2 bolts, they'll begin cleaning up the work site. EV1 will get the foot restraint and stow that on the zenith portion of P6. to be in a good location for a later spacewalk. EV1 will get the bag and translate back inboard to the airlock. And that bag will be stowed back where it came from on the zenith portion of the airlock, but now with a jumper on top that can be used for the starboard side. EV2 will retrieve the bag and the whiff extender. This is an extension for the foot restraint. That extension will be stowed on the CETA cart to be used for a later EVA. EV2 will bring in the 2 safety tether anchor points attached to the end of EV1 safety tether and come back to the airlock, put the bags in place. EV1 will then hand EV2 out the WETA bag. WETA stands for WVS External Transceiver Assembly. This will be worked on later in the EVA.
Okay, well, back with you. Once the crew stows that bag externally, we're going to send one of the crew members out to Columbus, where they're going to work on a connector that, or 4 connectors actually, that they had trouble with on US EVA 69. So on US EVA 69, there's a power cable that runs from the Bartolomeo science platform back to Columbus. They were able to partially engage 2 of the connectors, and then they left 2 of them capped. So we're going to go make an attempt to re-engage 2 of those connectors and get them fully mated. So the connectors consist of 2 halves. So I'll show you kind of both sides. So one side has receptacles, and the other side has plugs that go into those receptacles. So when you mate the 2 connectors together, you've got the 2 half shells, and then you're able to push this bail forward that causes them to mate and make good electrical connection with those pins and sockets. So what we actually were able to do on the Columbus Upgrades EVA, or US EVA 69, was get partially mated. So we weren't sure exactly how far those pins were engaged. So what we've seen from photos is that it looks like these sockets here, I don't know how well you can see them, but these sockets here have kind of closed up, and they're not as open as we expected, which we think may be inhibiting the pins from fully engaging. So we've got an EVA tool, which is similar to a pin in shape and size, that we're going to put in there in order to spread apart these tines in case they're stuck together in any way. So hopefully with that, we'll be able to mate it again and get a good mate of the P1 and P2 connector and be successful there. So if it's something that we're going to go out there and try, and if not, we'll gather a lot of good information and be able to go out there again and get it done. So we'll go back to the video and look at the final couple of tasks here.
EV1 will retrieve a foot restraint to help with the installation of the WETA. The WETA is basically an antenna that provides coverage for the wireless video system on the crew members' helmets. Once that foot restraint is set up, EV1 will grab the bag and ingress. There are 3 bolts that they need to drive to remove the failed WETA. We'll stow that on the bag and install the new one, driving 3 more bolts to put it in place and mate the connector. Once that's done, it will be checked out and verified that it works. EV1 will head back to the airlock, stow the bag and the foot restraint. EV2 will then head out to the CP9 worksite where they will be routing an Ethernet cable that runs out to one of our cameras. Once that camera is replaced, this cable will be connected to it so that it can become a Wi-Fi hotspot. They'll be using wire ties to hold it in place along handrail paths, as you see here. And that cable will be coiled at the base of the camera, again to be connected once a new camera is installed in that location. EV2 will translate back to the airlock, where both crew members will ingress and complete US EVA 72.
All right, next I'd like to mention the crew for these EVAs. EV1 will be Kate Rubens again, and this time EV2 will be Soichi Noguchi. Kate will be EV1 wearing the red stripes, and Soichi Noguchi will have the suit with the white stripes. This will be the 4th EVA for both of these crew members, and their first time working together outside on an EVA, but they have both seen at least most of these tasks in the neutral buoyancy lab, so they're very familiar with them. And as we mentioned, they've been training already and are getting familiar with all the different tasks that may be coming their way. Inside the vehicle, Mike Hopkins and Victor Glover will be the ones getting them suited up and ready to go out the door. And then again, we'll have Frank Rubio on the ground as our ground IV. They'll be walking the crew members through all of these individual tasks. So, again, we have some flexibility here as to what's going to happen with this EVA, but we've got a number of tasks that are potted, so we'll be ready to go, see what happens on the first EVA and accommodate with the second one. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Gary.
Thank you, Art, and thanks to our briefers for those initial remarks. We'll now open it up for questions. Again, if you're on our phone bridge, please press *1 to submit a question. And once your name is called, please state your name, affiliation, and to whom you'd like to direct your question. If you find that your question has already been answered, press *2 to withdraw it. On social media, please use the hashtag AskNASA. Let's start on our phone bridge with Camden Hall from the Talk of Titusville.
Yeah, hi there. My question is for Kenny or anybody who feels that they can take it. Is the placement of the new solar arrays decided, and is that decision set in stone yet? Thanks.
The placement of the new solar arrays, yes, we decided back early on in the program when we determined how many of these arrays we were going to get that we were going to outfit them in certain places on stations. So yes, at this point, we're putting them into places where, quite frankly, the older arrays are the ones that have been exposed the longest. And so, yes, the locations are already predetermined.
This next question comes from Marcia Dunn with the Associated Press. Marcia, if you're asking your question, we're not able to hear you. We'll give you another couple seconds.
Okay,
there
can
you
you
are.
hear me now?
You are on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. A couple questions for Kenny. I'm wondering, when are the new solar panels launching and on what vehicle? Why are you staging this first spacewalk on a Sunday morning? And I think it's even an extra hour earlier than usual, a real early bird special. What's the reasoning behind that? Is there any rush? And lastly, when does the current Crew 1 need to come back down to Earth? And is it a big deal if they're not up there to greet the Crew 2 in person? Thank you.
Okay. Hi, Marcia. First of all, the new arrays will start arriving on SpaceX 22, which is coming up in early June. After that, we'll have a flight, SpaceX 23, that will not have any solar arrays, and then we'll pick up the next set after that in the fall. So this year, we're anticipating, starting the deployment of these solar arrays as early as June. So again, very excited, which is one reason we want to go ahead and get these EVAs in our rearview mirror and get all the support structure in place to be able to handle that. So as far as I don't know the exact date when the crew needs to come home for Crew 1, and what I'm thinking in my mind is, when does that vehicle time out, if you will. But we have some runway on that. We're still trying to finalize the dates and working with the Commercial Crew Program on when we would be ready to send that vehicle home. But obviously, those are all the things that we're keeping in mind. Is what's the right way to do a handover? Do we need the handover? And again, trying to be respectful of the limits of the vehicle itself. So anyway, at this point, our Crew 2 launch is currently scheduled for 420, no earlier than is what we're saying. But again, at this point, the Crew 1 date for return hasn't been finalized. So again, those are all discussions that are still in work, and our friends from the Commercial Crew Program will continue to evaluate that. They're working with the ISS, for those of us in the ISS program, and when the time is right, we'll get those dates out, and once we understand that we got a good supportable plan. As far as the timing of the EVA, quite frankly, Marcia, it's not really a Monday through Friday kind of program, and I think all these guys here with me, as you see them smiling, would agree that's the case. We kind of try to do things when the time permits us to do them. Again, there's basically a stack of dominoes between now and the end of this increment. And I've asked the team to look at it like it's a 7-day-a-week kind of deal that we're in, and wherever the right time is to do an EVA, we'll go do an EVA, and it puts a little extra burden on the planners because we have to continue to maintain good crew work rest cycle. That's part of our ongoing job day in, day out, and make sure we got good refreshed crews and ready to respond to anything that might go on at any particular time of day on station. And so that's part of an ongoing challenge, but really we don't constrain ourselves to a Monday through Friday operation. In fact, a lot of our science, is time constrained science. And so it's not out of the realm for us to be working science on Saturday and Sunday as well. So that's how we got to a Sunday EVA. It's just basically where it worked out best for the overall plan.
Next question is from Bill Harwood from CBS News.
Hey, thanks. Just making sure you can hear me okay?
We hear you fine, Bill.
Thanks. I got a couple of questions here, one EVA related and then the other is for Kenny. When do you hope to begin and complete the installation? In other words, when would you hope, under current schedules, to finish the last actual install of an iROSA panel? I was curious why 3 and not 4. I mean, more power is better, but then I guess that's lifetime of program involved there. And can somebody compare the power before and after when you add these guys? And then, Kenny, I got a follow-up for you. Sorry to throw so many in at once.
Yeah, and Kenny, I'll let you take those power questions.
I didn't know if you guys want to jump on that or not. So, okay, yeah, we're going to be launching solar arrays, over the end of next year, Bill. Again, trying to outfit. We'll take the power, I think, from about 160 kilowatts up to about 215 kilowatts. So as we look forward in the program and look at the amount of commercial users that are coming on board, that quite frankly are looking for power that we didn't even dream of back in the mid 90s. And the technology really has gotten to the point in terms of power generation that we can do something like these rollout solar arrays, and they're not as big as the ones that we previously deployed, and yet we can get even more power out of them. So anyway, it just made good sense with regard to the program and trying to be accommodate as much as we can all the different users that are coming on board. And so anyway, we'll get started this year deploying solar arrays, and we'll be doing it into next year as these flights are as we fill out the manifest for next year. So anyway, that's the thinking. That's the increase in power that we're expecting.
Thanks. And Kenny, if I could just follow up one more for you. Looking ahead to the Soyuz crew rotation, when do you expect a decision on a U.S. astronaut riding up on the Soyuz? I was wondering if you could tell us a little about the arrangements. They seem a little hazy to some of us on the outside, and who the candidate is. I mean, I know you guys obviously know who that is, but if you could tell us anything about that, I'd sure appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, Bill, unfortunately, I'm not in a position to be able to clear up your haziness as it relates to the seat. That's from our perspective, that's an active procurement right now, and really just not in a position where we can talk about it. There's a synopsis out there on the street. Everybody's seen it. And by definition, that puts us in the realm of an active procurement that, quite frankly, we just can't talk about at this point for a lot of details. But as soon as we get on the backside of that, certainly we're going to make that information available to everybody.
Next question comes from Mark Carreau from Aviation and Space Tech.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to follow up on Bill Harwood's question about the ROSAs. Can you tell us which power channels at this point are going to be augmented with those? And maybe it's just the oldest solar panels or solar modules, but I just want to double check on that.
Marcos, if you're able to answer that one.
Sure, I at least know about 6 of them. I think we're planning for 6 out of the total 8 arrays. I can tell you right now, at least for the first 3 EVAs, we're looking at 2B and 4B. I do know that some of the inboard channels are going to get some of them as well, including 3A and 4A. I'm a little bit hazy on the other 2, but I do know that at least 6 of the 8 arrays are going to get the new upgrades for sure throughout the next year.
That's the number that we're on right now. Is 6 of 8 we'll have, and that's what we've procured. And again, same thing, Mark. We're gonna target the arrays that have been up there the longest and have had the most exposure.
Will the additional power give you some new capability in terms of something specific on the space station that's not there now that might be oriented towards future deep space, or is this kind of just going to be a capability you have and you can kind of figure out who gets to use it as you go?
That's correct. You're right on, Mark. At this point, it's more of a robustness type of increase. Again, what we're seeing is we're seeing more and more requests for power, especially as we're deploying some of these external platforms. Again, talking earlier about the Bartolomeo, there are users that are going to be going onto that platform. They're going to need power. These are things that when we started station and scoped the requirements for station, these are things that we hadn't necessarily thought about at the time. So I think it's more of a robustness increase that we're going to experience, and again, that'll allow us to accommodate more users, quite frankly.
Next question is from Hanneke Watering from Space.com.
Hi, this is Hanukkah from Space.com. Thank you for taking my question. I think this is probably for Chris. So I read that the astronauts might be installing a stiffener on the Quest airlock's thermal cover, and I'm wondering, is that still on the docket for the March 5th spacewalk? And also, can you talk a little bit about what exactly the problem was there and why this type of a fix is necessary? Thank you.
Sure, I'll take that question. We did indeed plan to install a stiffener, which is essentially a metal ring on the airlock hatch cover. Actually, we have a graphic for that if the producer wants to pull that up. But so we have a Kevlar, you can see in the middle of the graphic there, a Kevlar thermal cover that covers the airlock hatch, the metal hatch underneath it, and it's designed to keep the hatch at a nice cozy temperature so the mechanism works fine. But what we've seen over the years is the edges of that flexible thermal cover have tended to warp, and we call it potato chipping because it doesn't quite seal well enough. So we did want to install the metal ring that's on the left side of the graphic there to sort of force that thermal cover to be a nice flat shape so that it does its job better. But right now, with the way the timeline is laid out for the second EVA, we will not have time to do this task. We're going to go ahead and prioritize the Columbus electrical connector troubleshooting ahead of this. So we'll just go ahead and plan to do this thermal cover stiffener install on a later EVA, or if we get lucky and get really far ahead on the first EVA that Marcos and his team are going to perform, then we could potentially see this task getting added back onto the timeline for the second EVA. So we'll just have to see. The crew's already received their training material on this. We got the hardware ready to go. So we could see this get added to the timeline.
We'll now move on to social media questions. Again, if you're on our phone bridge, press *1 to add your name to our queue. Back on social media using the hashtag AskNASA. This one comes from Isaiah on Twitter. This one's for Art. What types of tools can we expect to see on these spacewalks?
Okay, well, that's a great question. On the first spacewalk for building the mod kit, you're going to see a lot of the pistol grip tools. So it's essentially a really fancy cordless drill. It's got a digital readout that can tell you the torques and turns on each bolt, and so there's various settings that allow you to program it to the desired torque. So I think that's the big one that you're going to see a lot of. Let's see. So going back to the vent tool and vent tool extender, I think that's a pretty important tool. We touched on that one earlier. I think those are the main ones. Not real tool heavy on these EVAs. Most of the things are going to be able to be done with the crew's hands. For routing the CP8 and CP9 cables, we have what's called a reel bag. So this is kind of like a garden hose, if you will. If you've had your garden hose that's wrapped up on a reel, the crew will have that attached to them, and then that cable will deploy out as they head out to the work site and tie it down with wire ties along the way. So I think those are the major tools that we'll be seeing on these two EVAs.
Next question comes from Rohan on Twitter. He's asking, with one of the astronauts performing 2 of the EVAs, how is rest time factored into spacewalk planning? This one can go to Chris.
Sure. We actually plan recovery time after the EVA, so that gives the crew a little bit of time, about half a day off to be able to recover from the EVA. And then the day before they go out, we also plan about half a day's worth of work. So again, it's sort of a light day that gives them a chance to rest up to make sure they're in really good shape before they head out the door for the very physically intensive task, which is a spacewalk.
Okay, and we have one more on Twitter. This one's from Jonathan. He's asking which EMUs will be used for Rubens, Glover, and Noguchi, respectively. Art, I don't know if you want to take this one.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at my data. I know 3015 is the EMU that Kate's going to be using, and I'd have to go back and look at the numbers on the other ones. I didn't bring that chart with me, but I can get you that information if you need it.
And that wraps up our questions on the phone bridge and on social media. Thanks to all who submitted questions today, and thanks to our briefers for taking the time to discuss the upcoming spacewalks. NASA TV coverage will begin at different times for each of the EVAs. On February 28th, coverage will begin at 3:30 a.m. Central, 4:30 a.m. Eastern, for an EVA start time at 5 a.m. Central, 6 a.m. Eastern. On March 5th, we'll expect this coverage to start at 4:30 a.m. Central, 5:30 a.m. Eastern, for an EVA start time at 6 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Eastern. Thanks again for joining us. That will wrap up today's briefing.